way through this history video. Yes children, in today's history class we are going to see the new lesson, chapter 8, Vital Villages, Thriving Towns. Chapter 8, Vital Villages, Thriving Towns. Yes, so before getting inside the lesson, let's see a small incident. Yes, Prabhakar at the blacksmith's shop. Yes, so Prabhakar watched these blacksmiths at a local shop. They wears a small table with iron tools like axes and sickles for sale, arranged for sale. Okay, so what happened, there was a bright fire was burning and two men were heating and beating the metal rods into a shape. Yes, and the place was very noisy and very hot, yet it was very fascinating for Prabhakar to watch. Yes student, so from this incident, that one thing which I was saying and was insisting was about the iron tool. Yes student, so this lesson we are going to deal with this iron tool and how the ancient civilization brought in these iron tools, and also how further, like how come there was a development with this iron tool brought into the history. Yes, like how it started as a village and how it is now as a towns and cities. Yes, so let's get inside the lesson now. So to start with, iron tools and agriculture. Yes, iron tools and agriculture. Things made of iron and steel are a part of our daily lives. Yes children, things made of iron and steel are a part of our daily lives. The use of this iron began in the subcontinent around 3000 years ago. The use of this iron was began in the subcontinent around 3000 years ago. Yes, some of the largest iron tools and weapons were found in megalithic burials. Yes children, now some of the largest and largest iron tools and weapons were found in the megalithic burials. About this megalithic burials, you would have read it in chapter 4. Yes, so they were found over there. Around 2500 years ago, there is evidence for the growing use of the iron tools. Yes, so around 2500 years ago, there was evidence for growing use of iron tools. Yes, which included axes for clearing the forest, the iron plowshares, which helped in increasing agricultural production. Yes, so which included axes for clearing the forest and the iron plowshares, which helped in increasing agricultural production. Moving on to the next, we will see the other steps to increase the agricultural production. The other steps with which during those days they increased the agricultural production. So one of the step was irrigation. Yes children, so one of the steps was irrigation. Yes, the initial stage, like the existence of the kings and the kingdoms were because the basic content, or what to say, the reason behind the existence of the kings and the kingdoms were the flourishing villages. Yes children, the people in the villages. Yes, until and unless the people is not working or not being productive or not having a proper income, one can't rule over that place. Yes, a flourishing village is said to be the basic reason for the existence of the kings and the kingdoms. Yes children, so to start with this flourishing village, so in a village there will be like different types of people which will be dealing on the coming topics. But now, as of now, we will see the other steps taken for the maximum productivity. Yes, so the basic unit for the existence of kings and kingdoms was the flourishing villages. The reasons are use of new tools like plowshares, iron plowshares. As I said earlier, they started using new tools like iron plowshares. Yes children, more than a manpower, if there is a tool being joined together, so what happens is there will be definitely an increase in productivity and less time consuming. Yes, so the system of transplantation was brought which increased the production. So irrigation was also used at that time as a part increased productivity. Yes children, so one of the the methods they say there are like other steps. One of the step was this irrigation. Yes, the first step was bringing in the iron plowshares. Yes, and next was the system of transplantation, yes, and then the system of irrigation for the increased productivity, yes children. And they built canals, artificial lakes, tanks and wells for the irrigation purpose, yes, and they started to build all these for the irrigation work, yes.
So children, let's do this activity. Fill in the rest by using the following phrases. Yes children. So the first box has kings need money for armies, palaces and forts. The second point, they demanded taxes from farmers. So the next point will be farmers have to increase production in order to pay the taxes. So this is possible with irrigation. So kings provide money and plan irrigation work. So kings provided money and planned the irrigation work. The sixth one is labor is provided by the people. Yes, the people who live there is as a labor, yes. So production increases, so does the revenue also increases. So the ninth point will be farmers also benefit because crop production is more certain. So farmers also benefit because crop production is more certain. So kindly fill this in your textbook.
Moving on to the next, we will see about the people who lived in villages. So who lived in these villages? Yes, during those days, people were being categorized according to their professions. Yes, children. So let's see who lived in the villages during those days. Yes. So far we saw how the iron came into existence and how the iron tools were used by the people, and how come this iron was found and the growth of the use of the iron, and then how it is related to the agriculture, how the agriculture made the village to be a flourished one, how it gave the the productivity which made them to become flourished village, and then now we are seeing who are the people who lived in these villages. So we started with iron, and in between we came to the tools which was made of iron, which helped in the agricultural productivity, and who were the people who were there in the villages, isn't it? Yes. So now we are going to see who were the people who were there in the villages. Yes. So there were at least 3 different kinds of people living in most of the villages in the southern and northern part of the subcontinent. Yes, children, there were at least 3 different kinds of people living in the most villages in the southern and northern part of the subcontinent. Yes. So to start with, let's see the Tamil region. Yes, in Tamil region, that is the southern region, how they were being categorized. Yes, how there can be different kinds were there. So the large landowners, the people who own a large land, were known as Vellalar. Yes, children, the people who own a large land were known as Vellalar. Ordinary plowman was known as Ulavar. The ordinary plowmen, that is the people who do agriculture, were known as Ulavar. Yes. Landless laborers or the slaves were known as Kadaisiyar and Adimai. Yes, the landless owner and the slaves were known as the Kadaisiyar and Adimai. So this is how they were being differentiated in Tamil Nadu. The large landowners known as Vellalas, the ordinary plowman known as Ulavar, and the landless laborers and slaves were called as Kadaisiyar and Adimai. Yes.
The earliest Tamil compositions. Some of the earliest works in Tamil, known as Sangam literature, were composed around 2300 years ago. These texts were called Sangam because they were supposed to have been composed and compiled in assemblies known as Sangams of the poet that were held in the city of Madurai. The Tamil terms mentioned above are found in Sangam literature. Yes, children, the Tamil terms like the Vellalar, Ulavar, Kadaisiyar and Adimai have been mentioned in the Sangam literature.
So moving on to the next, we'll see how they have been differentiated in the northern part. Yes. So the village headman was known as Grama Bojaka. Yes. The village headman, the head of the village, was called or known as Grama Bojaka. His position was hereditary. This village headman position was hereditary. By the term hereditary, it means that if the present village headman passes away, or if there is some bad situation happening, the next person who will become the Grama Bojaka is his son. Yes, so it goes on, and after his son, his grandson will be into the position. So it is hereditary. Yes, this position was hereditary. The Grama Bojaka was owner of a large land. Yes, this Grama Bojaka was often the largest landowner. Yes, children. So in a village, if any one of them owns a very big large piece of land, they are said to become the Grama Bojaka. That is how they select their Grama Bojaka. Yes. So the Grama Bojaka was often largest landowner. He had slaves and hired laborers to work in this and cultivate in his land. Yes, student. So he has the though he has a large land, what happened? He had slaves and also laborers to work and to cultivate in his land. Yes. So the king asks him to collect the taxes from the people who was in the villages. So the king used the Grama Bojaka to collect the taxes from the people in the village, and also he also functioned as a policeman. Sometimes a policeman as well as a judge. They used to say, Panchayat Talaivar, like that. They used to say, the same way. Yes. So during those days, Grama Bojaka was functioned as a judge and sometimes as a policeman. Yes. There were also some independent independent farmers at that time. They have their own lands, Yes. So they have a small piece of land comparative to the Grama Bojaka. Yes. So they were known as Grihapatis. Yes, children. During those days, there were also some independent farmers known as Grihapatis, and also there were some men and women such as Dasa and Karmakara. Yes, during those days there were also such men and women such as Dasa and Karmakara. Yes, who used to work, who don't have their own lands, so they used to work with the Grama Bojaka's lands or in others' lands. So that is how they have their own livelihood. Yes. So in most of the villages, there were some craftsmen such as blacksmith, potter, carpenter, and weaver. Yes, children. So in some villages, they used to have such craftsmen like blacksmith, potter, carpenter, and weaver. So this is how the people lived in the village. And so we'll revise again one more time. So there were at least 3 different kinds of people living in most of the villages. So in south, we saw the 3 different types. The large landowner was called as Vellalar. The ordinary plowman was called as the Ulavar. The people who work as laborers and slaves, where they were called as Kadesiya and Adimai. If you take the northern part, we saw about the village headman called Grama Bojaka. Yes, and his post was hereditary. So it is one category. And next we saw the people who work under him. They used to what? He used to have slaves and some people to work in his lands and to cultivate in his lands. And he also worked under the king. He goes, collects the taxes from the people in the village, and also he functioned as a judge as well as a policeman sometimes. Yes. And the next category we saw was about the independent farmers who own their own small piece of land, isn't it? And their name was Grihapatis. So the independent farmers who was known as Grihapatis. This was the second category. And third category we saw Dasas and Karmakaras. Dasas and Karmakaras who worked in the other's land. So this is how the people who live in the villages were being categorized. And not only that, children, in some villages there were some craftsmen such as blacksmiths, potter, carpenter, and weavers. Let's see finding out about cities. How they found out cities. So this topic, we have the collection of stories about the travelers and the sculptures and archaeology. Yes, how they found cities, like how they found there were some cities before. So all these were collected through some stories by the travelers and the sculptures which was made during those ancient times, and through archaeology. So we are going to see about that in this upcoming topic. Yes. So under this topic, we are going to see a term called Jataka. Yes. So if you have an habit of reading Tinkle, or even there is a book called Jataka Tales. No, yes. So Jataka is a stories composed by ordinary people. Yes, Jataka is a stories composed by ordinary people and written down and preserved by the Buddhist monks. So these Jatakas were the stories composed by the ordinary people, but they were written down and preserved by the Buddhist monks. Yes, children. So in these Jataka tales and in these Jataka stories, we can able to find out that they were like some cities during the ancient times, and there were like lots of functioning taking place over at that time, and about the professions over that time, and everything was there. Yes, and also even through the sculptures. Yes, so sculptures are the evidence about life in some of the early cities. Yes, children, like if you take the excavations of many places like Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, or even in south now in the recent times we're hearing about Kirali, isn't it? Like lots of news coming out about Kirali, no? Like there were some early existence over there, there were some existence, and there were some drainage system, and there were some wells, and a lot of planning was done, and they found a city itself in the underground during the excavations. Yes, so these sculptures are the evidence about life in some of the early cities. These sculptures have the carved scenes of depicting people lived in town and villages as well. Yes, so in certain sculptures there were the carved scenes depicting people in towns and villages as well. Yes, cities was developed 2500 years ago. Yes, children, the cities were developed 2500 years ago. They were the capitals of Mahajanapadas. Yes, this Mahajanapadas, you have learnt it in the lesson, in the previous lesson, isn't it? Like Janapadas and Mahajanapadas, how people were there in Mahajanapadas. Yes, so they were the capitals of Mahajanapadas. Some of the cities were surrounded by massive fortification walls, which means forts. Yes, so some of the cities were surrounded by massive fortification walls, which means that they have built a fort around their city. Yes, in many cities archaeologists have found the rows of pots, or the ceramic rings, no, the rows of pots and ceramic rings arranged on one top of the another, arranged one on top of the another. Yes, so they think that they think that these are the ring wells which was used at that time, and they are also the chances of being the drains and garbage dumps. They used to dump garbage down during those days because it turns to be a fertilizer. So we used to say, no. Yes, so as a biodegradable, they used to dump it and they used to take it as a fertilizer. So during those days, what they are thinking is seeing these ceramic rings or rows of pots. They are thinking that it's either a ring well, or it can be a dump, or garbage dump, or drains. Yes, most of the palaces, markets, and houses of ordinary peoples were not being found. Yes, and some of the houses which was built with mud bricks, wood, and thatch were not being found because they all get destroyed. Yes, because the woods, mud bricks, and everything just gets destroyed and settled down as a land itself. So it is tough for them to find out. Yes, so they may not be seen or may not be found during the archaeological excavations. Yes. So Baruch, a Greek sailor, has an account of how all the ports were there during that time. Yes, during the ancient time, he has a record of how the ports looked during the ancient times. Yes, Baruch, the Greek sailor, has an account of all the ports he has visited during that time. Yes, children. So the travelers like these, they used to come to the subcontinent, to the places, they just visit, and they used to take a account of everything, what all they saw and everything. So through this only, we will come to know what were the things present in the ancient subcontinent, and what were the houses, how people had how were the people's well-being and civilization, and everything is found either with, this is also one of the type of how they found out. Yes.
The story of Bari Gaza, the Greek name of Baruch. The gulf is very narrow at Bari Gaza and very hard to navigate for those coming from the sea. Ships had to be steered in by skillful and experienced local fishermen who were employed by the king. The imports into Bari Gaza were wine, copper, tin, lead, coral, topaz, cloth, gold, and silver coins. Exports from the town included plants from the Himalayas, ivory, agate, carnelian, cotton, silk, and perfumes. Special gifts were brought by merchants for the king. These included vessels of silver, singing boys, beautiful women, fine wines, and fine cloth. Make a list of all the things imported and exported from Bari Gaza. Underline at least 2 things that were not in use during Harappan times. Why do you think merchants brought gifts for the king?
So yes, children. So far we saw about the iron tools, how these iron tools came into existence and how it was so helpful in the agricultural, in the farming, in the, in case of high productivity. Yes, and also the people in the villages, the different kinds of people in the villages and how these cities were found from these villages. Yes, so the next thing which we're going to see is the coins. Yes, the coins, that is the money during those days. Yes, so coins were the medium to measure wealth. So right now, children, like the more amount of money we have with us is said to decide our wealth, isn't it? The richest person in the world or richest person in India, something like we are measuring according to their wealth they have, according to the money they have with them. Yes, so the same way during those days, coins were the medium to measure wealth. Yes, archaeologists have found several thousands of coins belonging to the period. Yes, children, so the archaeologists have found several thousands of coins belonging to that period. Yes, the earliest coins which were in use for about 500 years were Punchmarked coins. Yes, children, so the earliest coins which were in use for about 500 years were Punchmarked coins. Yes, so let's see what are the Punchmarked coins.
Punchmarked coins. Punchmarked coins. Punchmarked coins were generally rectangular or sometimes square or round in shape. Punchmarked coins were generally rectangular or sometimes square or round in shape, either cut out of metal sheets or made out of flattened metal globules. Made out of metal sheets or flattened metal globules, a small spherical body. The coins were not inscribed but were stamped with symbols using dies or punches. Hence they are called punched coins. These coins are found over most parts of the subcontinent and remained in circulation till the early centuries CE. Other means of exchange. Read this short poem from the Sangam collection. As they carry the white paddy of their land to exchange it for the salt of another, crossing the long roads in carts through sands white as moonlight, taking whole families who hate to be left behind. The departure of the salt merchants leaves the city empty. Salt was produced plentifully along the sea coast. What are the merchants planning to exchange it with? How are they traveling?
So next, we will see the cities with many functions. Yes, cities with many functions. Yes, very often a single town was important for various reasons. Yes, children. So most of the time, a single town is said to be very important for various reasons, and one of it is the Mathura. Yes, children, the Mathura. Yes, Mathura is important because it was located at the crossroads of two major routes of travel and trade. Yes, children, during those days they were like very often a single town is used to be like very famous or like very much important for various reasons, and one among that is the Mathura. Yes, so it was important because it was located at the crossroads of two major routes. Yes, student, crossroads of two major routes of travel as well as trade. Yes, student. So from northwest to east and from north to south. Yes, so this is where Mathura was located. Okay, why Mathura was significant? Let's see why Mathura was significant. Yes, farmers and herders from adjoining areas provide food for the people in the nearby villages. Yes, in the nearby cities. Yes, so the farmers and the herders from the adjoining areas provide food for the people in the cities. Yes, and Mathura was a center where some extremely fine sculptures were produced. Yes, so Mathura was a Mathura was a center, an important center where some extremely fine sculpture was produced. Yes. Around 2000 years ago, it became the second capital of Kushnahas. Yes, student, around 2000 years ago, Mathura became the second capital of Kushnahas. Yes, and Mathura was also considered as a religious center. Yes, so Mathura was a religious center. There were some Buddhist monasteries and Jaina shrines. Yes, they were Buddhist monasteries and Jaina shrines, and more importantly, it is an important center to worship Lord Krishna. Yes, it is an important center for worship Krishna. Yes. And also, children, there were some inscriptions found in Mathura. Yes, so inscriptions have been found in Mathura. Yes, these are short inscriptions or the recording gifts made by the men and women to monasteries and shrines. Yes, children, the inscriptions are the short inscriptions or recording gifts made by the men and women to monasteries and shrines. And in those inscriptions, they have mentioned the blacksmiths, goldsmiths, garland maker, basket makers, potters, etc. Okay, so they gave these kind of gifts to the monasteries. So that is why these professions were mentioned in the one of the inscriptions. So they gave gifts to the monasteries and the shrines. So in the short inscriptions, they mentioned the professions or the people, the goldsmith, the blacksmith, potters, garland maker, basket makers and all. They gave gifts actually. So these people gave gifts to the monasteries and shrines. So these were the inscriptions found in Mathura. Yes. So moving on to the next, let's see about the crafts and the craft persons. Yes, let's see about the crafts and the craft person. So a person who is extremely fine in pottery is said to be a craft person, isn't it? A person who is said to be extremely fine in his own craft work. Northern black polished ware. Northern black polished ware. Yes, so they are said to be found during the excavations in the northern part of the subcontinent. Yes, children. The archaeological evidence for many crafts were not survived. Yes, children. The archaeological evidence for such crafts were not survived. Yes. And
Northern black polished ware. NBPW is a hard wheel made metallic looking ware with a shiny black surface. The potter used to expose the earthenware to very high temperature in his kiln, which resulted in the blackening of its outer surface. A fine black slip was also applied on this, which gave the pottery a mirror-like shine.
Not only with the pottery and the crafts, children, also they have the manufacturing of clothes was important during the ancient time. Yes, so they were the manufacturing of clothes were done. Yes, so in north it was Varanasi. There were like two centers. In the north it was Varanasi, and in south it was Madurai, who had the centers for manufacturing the clothes to the people. Yes, and also they had they had businesses, and they also exported certain clothes, such clothes from here to there. So they started their trade at this point. And not only that, children, both men and women worked in these manufacturing units.
Rules for spinning and weaving. Arthashastra mentions the rules for spinning and weaving being done in workshops under the supervision of a special official. Widows, young women who are differently abled, nuns, mothers of courtesans, retired women servants of the king, women who have retired from service in temples, may be used for processing wool, bark, cotton, hemp, and flax. They should be paid according to the quantity or quality of work. Women not being permitted to leave their homes can send maid servants to bring the raw material from the superintendent and take the finished work back to him. Women should go at dawn to give their work and receive their wages. There should be enough light to examine the work. In case the superintendent looks at the woman inappropriately, he should be punished. If a woman does not complete her work, she will have to pay a fine and her thumb can be cut off.
Next, we will see about shrenis. Yes, S-H-R-E-N-I-S. Shrenis. Yes. So these shrenis are association of craftspersons and merchants. So these shrenis acted as an association of craftspersons and the merchants. Yes. These shrenis provide training and also procured raw materials, distribution of finished products. Yes, so these shrenis provide training, procured raw materials, distribution of the finished products which was manufactured over years. So shrenis organized trade and served as a banks. Yes, children, these shrenis organized trades. So the job of the shrenis is, we saw that they were starting up with the trade, they started manufacturing of cloths and everything, and even the pottery ware. Yes, so they started to trade these clothes. Yes, and these shrenis also served as a banks. Yes, which in these banks the rich men and women deposited money. Yes, so the shrenis who served as a banks and which the rich men in those banks where the rich men and women deposited their money. So during those time, what were the money? The coins which they had. Yes, so shrenis organized trade and served as banks which were the rich people, the rich men and women deposited money. Yes, and money was invested during those stages. Yes, children, in the trade or the manufacturing or in buying the raw materials and all those small business, the money was invested, and even in the banks the money was invested, and the part of the interest were returned, it was returned as well as they used it for the they used to give it for the shrines. They used to give it as a support for the shrines and monasteries. Yes, children. So the rich people, they deposited their money in the bank where the shrine started, and what happened? Their money was invested, and part of the interest which they got was they can have it, or else as an interest they can give it as a support. They can give it to the shrines and the monasteries. So moving on to the next, let's see about the Arikamedu. So far children, we started with the iron tools, isn't it? The iron tools and how it is used in agriculture. And the next we saw about the different process or the new methods which was brought into agriculture, and in that we emphasized on the irrigation, how the irrigation started and what all the things came up when the irrigation was there, like wells, artificial lakes and so on. And after that we saw like who started this agriculture and how the kings and kingdoms got spread. It is because of the flourished villages and how these villages developed and who lived in these villages. Yes, we saw like who lived in these villages, isn't it? The people who lived in the villages, the three different kinds of people, both in south and in north, who lived in the villages. And after that we saw how the cities was found, how the cities was found, like through which modes, like because the cities, in the records it is said that the cities were there, but still we need to know like in which way we got to know about these cities. Yes, so we got to know about the cities in our subcontinent through stories, through travelers and through archaeological researchers. Yes, and after that we saw about the about the coins, isn't it? The coins during those days, how they were the money transferings done. Yes, and also we saw about the cities with many function. In that we saw about an important city called Mathura. Yes, and why Mathura was significant. And also we saw about the inscriptions found in Mathura, which told about the goldsmiths, the blacksmiths, basket makers, garland makers who gave gifts to the monasteries and the shrines. And the next we saw about what? The northern black pottery ware which got during the archaeological excavation, which was famous during that time. Yes, and about the cloth trade. Yes, about the manufacturing of clothes was famous. Yes, and there were two centers for manufacturing the clothes, one in north and one in south, and Varanasi in north and Madurai in south were the two centers for the manufacturing of clothes. And in this manufacturing unit, both men and women. And also at last we saw about what the Shrenis. Yes, so the Shrenis, the people who were the association of craftsperson and the merchant, they provide training, procured raw materials and distribution of finished products. Yes, they were like organized trade among the countries, and also they served as a bank where the rich men and women deposited their money, and for the investment they made, they used to get interest, isn't it? So they get back the interest, but apart from the interest, they will give it as a support to the monasteries and the shrines which was over there. So moving on to the next, let's see about the insights of Arikamedu. What is Arikamere? Yes, children. Arikamere. Arikamedu. Yes, Arikamere. Yes. So between 2200 and 1900 years ago, Arikamedu was a coastal settlement. Between 2200 and 1900 years ago, Arikamedu was a coastal settlement where ships unloaded goods from distant lands. Yes, children, where the ships unloaded goods from distant lands. Yes. So let us see what was significant in Arikamedu. Let us see what was significant in Arikamere. Yes, so warehouse was found at the site. Yes, children, in the during the archaeological excavations, a warehouse was found at that site. Yes, other finds include the potteries. Yes, so they found three different types of potteries over there. The first one is pottery from the Mediterranean region, such as amphora. Pottery from the Mediterranean region known as amphora. Yes, children. And another pottery which is red glazed stamped pottery known as Arantine. Red glazed stamped red glazed pottery known as Arantine. Yes. So this word Arantine was from, so this pottery Arantine was named after a city in Italy. Yes, so this was the second type of pottery. And the third type of pottery was a very simple pottery which is like made locally and which came over there through Roman. Yes, so it has some Roman designs also in it. So there were three types of potteries they found. The first one was the pottery from the Mediterranean called as the amphora, and second one the stamped red glazed pottery Arantine, which is named after the city in Italy. Yes, and the third one is a simple pottery which has some Roman designs in it. Yes, and they also found some Roman maps, glassworks, gems were also found over there. Yes, and small tanks were also found in the same place. There were some small tanks found, and dyeing vats were also found. So these dyeing vats were used to dye the cloths. Yes, children, the dyeing vats used to dry the clothes. So these were all found, and also there were like plenty of evidences for bead making and semi-precious stones. Yes, children, there were like lots of evidences for bead making and semi-precious stone. Yes, they also found what? Small tanks and dyeing vats. The dyeing vats are used for dyeing the cloths. Yes, children. So, and also they got plenty of evidences for bead making and semi-precious stones. Children, so far we saw about the vital villages and the thriving towns. How the villages turned to be a town. Yes. So right from the beginning, we started with iron, isn't it, children? Yes. So with that small piece of iron, we found how it was so helpful for the agricultural way. So the iron tools and how it was helpful for agriculture. And because of agriculture, there was some improvement in their lives, isn't it? Like there will be an increase in production, which increases in profit. So automatically there is an improvement in their lives. So the people who were there in the villages, isn't it? Yes. So these people, because of the flourished villages only, there were some many kings and kingdoms set up. Yes. And from that only they came to know like who are the peoples who were there in the village. So who live in the villages. Yes. So we saw the different types of people who are living in the villages, isn't it? In the south we saw 3 types. Who are those 3 types? Vellalas. So in south we saw 3 types. Who are those 3 types? Vellalas, Ulavas and the Karesiar and the Adimai. Yes. And in the northern part also we saw the 3 different types of people who lived in the villages. First one, the head, village head. No, what was he called as? Grama Bochaga. Yes. And the second one, the independent farmer, that is who owns a small piece of land. He was called as Griharitas. Yes. And also then we saw about 2 sets of people, that is Dasas and Karmakars, who worked in the other lands. Yes. And also the next we saw about the cities. How the cities developed through the stories, and also how through the travelers we came to know that there were some cities before in this subcontinent. Yes. And also through archaeological research. Yes. And after that we saw about the important city called Mathura. The role of an important city. Yes, the Mathura, how Mathura was there and why Mathura was so special, because of the religious center, and also it was in the crossroad of the trade and travel routes. Yes. And also we saw about the coins, isn't it? The coins in those days, how it was used, and the coins were the thing which helped us to know the wealth of a person. Yes. And also at the same time we saw about the shrines who were acting as what? The association between the production, association for the trade and for the marketing. Yes. And also they served as a banks, isn't it? They started trade and they also served as a banks, and where rich men and women deposited their money in it. And also from that the part of the interest was given as a support to the monasteries and the shrines. And at last we came to saw about the Arikamedu. Yes, a closer look to Arikamedu. We saw what is Arikamedu. Arikamedu is also a settlement near the coastal areas during between 2200 to 1900 years ago. Yes. And also we saw about the significance of Arikamedu. What were the things were found? There were some warehouse, the 3 different types of potteries, and also about the bead making, precious stones, and the dyeing vats, small tanks, and everything. Yes. And in between also we saw about the crafts and the craftsperson. During those days, what were the crafts were there? And about the blackware, northern blackware pottery, isn't it?
Let's do the book back exercise. Fill in the blanks. Vellalar was a word used for large landowners in Tamil. Vellalar. The Graham Bojaga often got his land cultivated by the slaves and workers. Ploughmen were known as Ulavar in Tamil. Most Grihapatis were smaller landowners. Choose the correct answer. Ring wells were used for drainage. Ring well was used for drainage. Punchmarked coins are made of silver. Mathura was an important religious center. Mathura was an important religious center. Shrenis were association of craftspersons. Shrenis were association of craftsperson. So children, kindly do this in your textbook.
Answer in paragraph. Okay children, your classwork material. Yes. So write about Mathura. Write about Mathura. Mathura was the second capital of Kushnaha dynasty. Mathura was the second capital of Kushnaha dynasty. Mathura is an important political administrative center. Mathura is an important political administrative center, and also an important religious center, Yes, the school of art flourished in Mathura. The school of art flourished in Mathura. Various Buddhist monasteries, Jaina shrines were situated here. Various Buddhist monasteries, Jaina shrines were situated here. Mathura is located at the junction of important trade route. Mathura is located at the junction of an important trade route. Okay children, with this we have come to the end of today's class. Yes children, in today's class we started with a small object called iron, isn't it? Yes, the iron tool, and how it takes place a great role in history, isn't it? How this iron tool how this iron tool brought in the development into the people. I hope today's class would have been interesting for you, and I hope you all are clear with today's concept. So children, don't forget, stay home and stay safe. Take care everyone. Bye. Thank you.